Hello. I want to talk to you briefly about the Berkin Colonial Women's Paper Project. Um, this talk will coincide with the handout, so I want you to take a look at the handout and I'll try to explain my thoughts and what I'm looking for in terms of what you'll be doing for this project. The paper topic starts off with the title Women's Experiences in Colonial America, and we've been doing readings related to Berkin, chapters 1, 2, 3, and 5. Chapter 1 deals with British women coming to the Chesapeake. Chapter 2 deals with British women coming to New England. Chapter 3 deals with Native American women. And Chapter 5 deals with African women in the colonial period. So what this does is it provides us with an opportunity to make some comparisons and some contrasting arguments about these women's experiences. I want you to think particularly about how much we've been studying, race and ethnicity, but also other intersectional factors like gender. The Fairer Sex video, the True Colors video were meant to try to control for one factor while testing either for race or for gender. So this is kind of an extension of that. We're bringing an ethnic studies lens to this project. So the opening paragraph says, what we know or don't know about the colonial period is surpassed only by what we do not know about colonial women's experiences. A lot of this project has to do with this notion of the problem of the sources, right? We know very little about colonial America generally. We know even less about colonial women's experiences, right? And we know even less about women of color's experiences. So there are several levels of this kind of problems of the sources that I want you to consider as you think about the sources we do have available to us. Despite the fact that there are fewer sources for these women, you can still make arguments about them. That's what Carol Berkin essentially is doing in her book, right? Each individual chapter focuses on a specific woman and tries to make some arguments about the broader experiences of that category of women. So continuing with the handout, using the theme of imagined community, to think about the various ways that individuals and groups forge community. Think also about how much of what we know about the women of various groups might in fact be imagined. Right, a lot of what we talk about when we deal with colonial women is the fact that we often see them through the eyes of others. Right, we often see them through the eyes of others. These women rarely get to speak for themselves. It's usually the men in their lives, or often, as in the case of Chapter 3 in Watamo, even their enemies speaking for them. We never actually hear from them directly, so sometimes we have to read between the lines in terms of figuring out what these women's experiences were like. Continuing, it says, think also about how much what we know about the women of various groups might in fact be imagined. For instance, how much of our knowledge of women's daily lives comes from official sources such as colonial court records, church records, etc., from the testimony of their male contemporaries, or are the result of long historical debates and really constitute contemporary scholars' educated guesses. Again, getting back to that problem of the sources, what we know and what we don't end up knowing about these women and have to guess about. This project in part shows how an ethics studies approach learning about an individual or group by studying its supposed opposite or by studying related individuals or groups can actually increase our knowledge of underrepresented and or understudied groups. Excuse me. Keep this in mind as you pursue this project. So the specific argument of the paper will be up to you, but this paper prompt pushes you to think about central questions whose answers help you formulate a clear, concise, analytical thesis statement. So I want you to use this handout as, like it says, an essay prompt. I want you to read through it a few times, think about it, and what does it prompt you to argue about these women's experiences? What are the most important aspects of identity that you're going to pull into your paper? What categories of women are you talking about? What themes emerge in their experiences? And you have to be focused and selective in that you're only going to have time and space to talk about a handful of things. So I'm going to help you do that, and I'll talk more about where we'll begin specifically with your thesis statement. So although I'm pushing you to think first in terms of questions, there are a number of themes that may help you develop your own critical comparative argument. So in terms of the general instructions, it says compare and contrast 2 to 3 categories of colonial women while recognizing the problem of the sources and other obstacles that tend to obscure women's experiences in this period of colonial American history. So 2 to 3 categories of women. We have 4 to choose from, right? Chapter 1, Chapter 2, Chapter 3, and Chapter 5. Since our focus is on race and ethnicity, I want you to definitely involve Chapters 3 and 5, Native women and African women, but your choice of a third category is up to you. It could be either Chapter 1 or Chapter 2 on British women to the Chesapeake or British women to New England. Possibilities may include, and letter B, it kind of outlines what I just said in terms of the various categories of women. So letter C, consider factors such as race, class, gender, religion, region, immigration experience. There could be others, legal status, widowhood, right? Think about the themes that emerge in these women's experiences. Carol Berkin is good about choosing one individual woman, right, and talking about her story and then using her story to talk about the larger category of women that she's interested in. I'll talk more about that later. But think about what 2 or 3 topics, 2 or 3 themes you want to discuss, in addition to the 2 or 3 categories of women that you want to discuss. It says you'll probably only be able to discuss 2 or 3 key themes or factors in detail given the brevity of this project. I'm only asking you to do 3 to 4 pages, so you have to be focused in your argument and you have to be focused with your thesis. I'm going to help you do that. In generating a thesis, consider related questions such as how did women fit into the society, right? Demographics, kind of population statistics and things may come into your argument. Leadership and labor roles, these women's position in the society. Cultural practices, family, religion, childbirth is one of the themes that comes up in the various chapters. Religion as a factor, right? So think about what 2 or 3 topics or themes you feel you have to discuss in order to make your argument. How do women's experiences mirror or differ from male experiences, right? In many ways, we're arguing that these women have unique experiences to women, unique to women. In other respects, they may be similar to men's experiences in the colonial period. So think about the similarities and the differences there, right? In studying these specific categories of women, we learn more about women's experiences generally, and in studying women's experiences, we learn more about the colonial period more generally. So this is one of the reasons why an ethnic studies lens is valuable, in that you may be focusing on something specific, but it really unlocks much larger ideas, much larger arguments. So in terms of the specific instructions at the bottom of the page, your papers will be 3 to 4 pages in length, so your argument must be focused and your writing concise. No papers over 4 pages will be accepted, right? Since disciplined writing is one of the goals of this assignment. So I'm pushing you to be very focused, and I'm going to help you do that beginning with your thesis statements. So it is particularly important that you generate a specific and analytical thesis statement that guides your paper. Letter B, another practical strategy is to use introduction and conclusion paragraphs to effectively make connections between your specific argument about particular groups of colonial women and their broader significance, their larger significance in the colonial period more generally. In addition, your topic sentences should all take a position, introduce the material that follows in the body of the paragraph, and should all relate directly back to your thesis. So as you see, this all brings us back to the thesis. Everything goes back to specifically what you're going to argue. I'm going to make a separate video, just a couple of minutes long, talking specifically about this thesis and what it should entail. But hopefully this explanation of the paper prompt is helpful to get you started.